There is a myth that America's greatness was forged on battlefields in the name of freedom. But history is not a moral textbook. It is an accounting ledger. At the beginning of the 20th century, the world belonged to Europe. London, Paris, Berlin, and Vienna were the centers of power, culture, and unimaginable wealth. By 1945, that civilization had turned into a smoking mass grave. While the old empires committed collective suicide, a new predator was growing on the other side of the Atlantic. The United States became a superpower not because it defeated all its enemies, but because its friends and enemies destroyed each other, leaving behind nothing but debt and ashes. In 1914, Europe made its first fatal mistake. The Great War was not a struggle for ideals. It was an industrial meat grinder that demanded infinite resources. Britain and France were the richest nations on earth, yet their gold evaporated. They needed weapons, steel, and grain, and there was only one market capable of supplying all three. For the first time in history, the financial center of the world began to shift. Wall Street replaced the city of London. While millions rotted in the trenches of Verdun, American factories ran day and night. The United States did not merely sell goods, it issued the loans used to buy them. By 1918, Europe owed America more money than it could repay in 100 years. The world did not yet understand what had happened. After 1918, Britain and France believed they were victors. On paper, they were bankrupt. Washington grasped a simple truth. Why colonize territories when you can colonize economies? While Europe exhausted itself clinging to fading colonial empires, the United States built an invisible one, an empire of the dollar. But for this system to become absolute, Europe had to fall once more, and far more brutally. The Second World War was the final nail in the coffin of European dominance. By 1940, Britain stood alone against the Nazi war machine, with no money and no real allies. That was the moment Washington presented the bill. The Lend-Lease program is often portrayed as an act of generosity, but the devil lived in the details. In exchange for destroyers and food, Britain surrendered its global military bases and opened its closed imperial markets to American corporations. This was not a lifeline. It was a bankruptcy proceeding with the United States as chief creditor. In July 1944, while Allied soldiers were still dying in France, the fate of the post-war world was sealed. The dollar would rule. Not gold, not the pound, only the dollar. Europe had not yet buried its dead and had already lost its financial sovereignty. In 1945, Germany was destroyed. France was humiliated. Britain was a financial corpse. The great powers of the old world were reduced to beggars. America emerged from the war with double its pre-war GDP, the atomic bomb, a massive navy, and control over global finance. But one problem remained. If Europe died of hunger, there would be no one left to buy American goods and no one left to repay American debts. Washington needed to revive the corpse, but to do it in a way that kept it permanently on a leash. The world believed the Marshall Plan was charity. In reality, it was the most sophisticated market takeover in human history. But one force stood in its way, and that force was already preparing its response from the shadows of the Kremlin.